to live. And we should be live. And it says we're live on Wine and Whiskey Wednesdays. We don't have Steve yet. We don't know where Steve is. He's floating around somewhere. I'm sure he will join us.
Oh,
Well,
there's
the
Godfrey.
pooch.
there's Godfrey. Yep,
He's
all settling.
ready.
He's always ready.
He's ready to go to sleep.
He'll go around in circles there. He's all good now
Yeah.
for the next hour. So welcome everyone to another edition of Wine and Whiskey Wednesdays.
Water.
Are we even hot ninjas with double T's when Steve's not here? Or so are we just single T hot ninjas tonight? I don't know. But
Come on, Steve. We need a T in here. Slacker.
he usually cuts it really close, and we'll log on like a minute before or a minute and a half before. But apparently he's cutting it really close tonight and is coming in after the fact. I guess he wants to make an entrance. So it's the three of us tonight, I guess, until Steve joins us. If anyone else is in the audience, please feel free to join with us as well. I'd love to have you online. So I thought that our topic for tonight, there's Steve. Let's update him there. So there's a bunch of announcements that have come out over the last couple of days, and I thought that that we would talk about it. And there's Steve. Welcome, Steve. Hey, Shannon, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So our topic tonight is we're going to talk about some of these announcements that have come out in our industry. We're going to talk about, so there's a bunch of
That's me, sorry.
announcements that have come out over the last.
There.
I can hear myself. Am I not speaking?
No, I was looking for Facebook. I wasn't sure if we were live, and I finally found it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for confirming that we're live. So I thought that we would talk about, some of these new announcements that have come out in the industry, how they're going to impact us, and let's kind of brainstorm and think about ways to make sure that we are all still relevant in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years. For as long as we want to be in business, let's make sure that we are going to still stay relevant, and maybe even see what people's thoughts are on what some of the upcoming changes are that are taking place in the industry. So the first one that I want to talk about is, so there was an announcement that came out. It was a press release that came out between Xero and Uber Business in Australia. So it's only in Australia right now. It isn't anywhere in the North America as far as I know. It was specifically a Xero and Uber Australia. And there's Brian joining us. Just give me a second and I'll let him in. So it was an Uber Business and Xero Australia press release. Hey, Brian, welcome.
Hey, what's the tie-in? I'm still having a hard time figuring that one out.
Okay, so what they announced was an integration and a connection between platforms.
Between Uber and Xero.
Between Uber Business and Xero.
No, we just get Brian to write us a zap and we're done.
Yes.
No press release needed, right,
Easy
Brian?
peasy.
There you go.
And so basically what's going to happen is if you are using Uber for Business, instead of getting a per ride bill, you're going to get a monthly bill, which is cool for businesses.
Absolutely.
But the biggest thing that came out of that article was your monthly bill is going to automatically post into your Xero account when they issue that bill. So it's going to be issued from Uber Business. It's going to show up in some kind of a holding screen or something. So it actually has to be approved at your end to post into Xero, but it's going to automatically post into your program without any bookkeeper intervention, without any human intervention. You can probably bypass the holding completely. One company issues an invoice that shows up in the accounting software for the customer. So the other thing is all of the rules that are controlling where that is going to post are going to be in Uber, not in Xero. So in your Uber business panel or platform, or your, I guess your control center in Uber business is where you can designate your employees as teams, so that if it's this team, the expense goes here. If it's this team, the expense goes somewhere else. You can put limits on how often they can travel, where they can travel using this Uber business. So all of the controls are not in your accounting software management to manage your expenses. It's all in the supplier platform. So, and I remember, and I'm probably dating myself, it's probably 3 or 4 QB Connects ago, I remember there being a discussion, and I don't know if it was a keynote discussion or off the main stage, where they talked about for QuickBooks that so say for example, we as AIS Solutions issued out an invoice to our customers, it would automatically post in our customers' books as long as they were using QBO. So again, no human intervention at all. It's, I'm going to issue an invoice from QBO and the recipient is using QBO, and it's automatically going to post in their books.
That's totally sounds plausible and logical, and wonder why we haven't seen more of that. You know, we've been hearing that. I know it. I remember that conversation now that you bring it up. It just seems natural. I mean, to me, that's no surprise. The Xero Uber thing is a bit different. You know, I didn't expect to see that happen, but I think it's just the beginning of other stuff. Like, you're going to see more and more of that. It already happens at like the SAP level.
Yes.
Where, you know, you've got these tie-ins, these integrations that are so tight. That's what makes these ERPs so compelling to large businesses. The oil patch already has these systems that you cannot get paid unless you tap into their system. So I think that sounds cool. I think you'll see more of it. It's from what it sounds like if this is like a pilot project, we haven't heard anything else like it. It'll probably take a couple of years. But I welcome something like that.
The pilot project started February or March of 2019.
Okay.
So now it is actually live for everyone that uses Uber for business.
But for sort of for the industry in general, it's kind of a pilot because no one else is doing this. We've hardly heard of it. But it's a cool concept.
It is. It's an awesome, you know, it's the use of AI, it's the use of integration, it's the use of paperless and flow through of information, but that is going to severely affect a lot of the people in our industry who aren't going to be needed, because we've now significantly reduced the amount of entry that's required. Even before it was, okay, it went up to Receipt Bank or HubDoc, and someone had to push it across into the software. So still
need to be handled along the way. Yeah.
We've now pulled that person out completely. Again, you know, at the beginning, the technology isn't going to be perfect and there's going to be human intervention. But this is just the first step, or I guess the sign of where it is that we're going and what is that going to mean for all of us. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. Is this is only one thing that's happening in our industry, and it's fairly new. How are we going to stay relevant? How are we going to stay on top of it?
Well, something like that excites me because I don't play in that bookkeeping space. I love that kind of automation. That's what I sell to my clients. Like, you know, I had this conversation with Receipt Bank the other day. They have a new person that's in charge of it's like an advocacy program, and they're reaching out to people that they've been told to talk to. And I was telling them that I don't think of Receipt Bank as a bookkeeping tool. I think too many people in our industry go, well, get it. It makes bookkeeping easier. The thing we have to start thinking about is, how do we make our clients' businesses easier? And we can still be a part of that. You bring in these automations, you bring in this slick system where you're bringing in all these integrations, whether it be Uber or something else. As long as you're still driving that whole process, yeah, you might be less. Goes back to this, you're saving your customer time and money, and the value there is huge. You can charge big bucks for these sorts of consulting because you're going to save them. You can quantify the savings. So
So
I'm not sure it's going to take away from anything if we look at it that way.
The only thing, Brad, it'll take away from is the bookkeepers that just do data entry.
Exactly.
Because, and, for years, we've been being told to, expand and do more consultancy things. And I know when I was getting started, it just seemed like everything was all data entry, and it was redundant. And
It's boring.
I would love for when I send out my invoices or sales receipts that they just automatically went into my QBO clients. That would be
Absolutely.
a huge time saver for me.
Yeah, exactly. And
Okay,
so it is, I know what you're saying, because it's the data entry side. I wasn't a bookkeeper per se for my career, but I did bookkeeping for very large companies out of necessity. I'd be parachuted in. They would let go of their entire accounting team on Friday afternoon, and I'd come in on the Monday and be expected to understand these businesses, how they ran. So I'd have to do bookkeeping for like a year before I had a team in place. So that's kind of where I come at this. And I've always hated the inefficiency of accounting systems with all the paper and all the handling and all the manual entry. Systems work better when they just automatically work themselves. So I think this is exciting. From the people that I network with, and the people on this call, and the people we see on social media, we're cutting edge. We're not afraid of this stuff. I don't think if we start thinking, oh, it's going to take away from what I'm doing, you have to look at it as an opportunity, because if you're cutting edge like that and you can sell that to your clients, they're going to love you for it. I don't think anything goes away.
So is it all, the advisory that we keep hearing everywhere?
I hate that word. I'm going to be honest with you. Advisory. If I had whiskey here, I would have a drink, because I am so tired of that word. I really am, because we turned it into a commodity. And go do advisory. Go do advisory. The concept is sound. There's no doubt about it that we have to offer our clients better options than just what's becoming a commodity. Like we know that the actual bookkeeping work is becoming a commodity. So the advisory is just the value you add on top of that keeps your clients wanting more. And I think that's what people in our community are really good at. We have some really, really smart people in this community. The people who aren't going to stay on top of it, I hate to say it, but it's a little bit self-induced. This isn't overnight. This whole cloud revolution's been going on for what, 5-6 years now? 7, 8?
No, at least.
It is.
So there's no excuses for being left behind now. It's kind of like if you really want to keep your head in the sand, go for it. Keep working desktop platforms and keep pushing paper. There's going to be no demand.
Platform.
Well, no, desktop's great. I just did a massive enterprise conversion for a client, and it was the only tool they could use right now. But what I mean is the ones that go, oh, but I want to use desktop because it's cheaper and I can make, I can have 100 clients on it and pay the same amount. It's like, that's not the proper way to be thinking. You're basically doing what's good for you, not your client in that situation. That's why when I hear that, I get frustrated, because desktop is good. That's the thing about QuickBooks. And what I can use it in my own business is the QuickBooks brand is a hot brand in the small business community. And I can offer them, service with any of them. Desktop is a great tool. There's no doubt about it, but it's still not enabled for the future. There's going to be a point where desktop has to kind of let go, and it's going to have to give way to the cloud, but we know that we're not quite there yet.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so Sarah joined us, and Bianca, welcome, ladies. Brian, any thoughts you'd like to share on the Xero Uber way of things moving forward?
I don't think it'll completely remove any bookkeeper work. Like obviously it'll remove actually getting the receipt into Xero. But I think from our discussion earlier, I think you had mentioned that it's going to show up in a draft format, which means there's still some manual intervention there to actually go in and verify that it went correctly.
Yeah.
That it's going to the right not class. What's the term in Xero? I forget. But
I don't know, because we don't
we'll call it class. I forget the term. But if it's going to the right class, for example, you may have to adjust that yourself manually.
So is that like the expense account?
Probably spell it differently just to be cool.
No, like say like a department, right?
Okay.
But yeah, I think there's still going to be some manual intervention, and I haven't read the article, but what if it only integrates directly with Xero's expense reporting platform? A lot of people like Receipt Bank's expense reporting platform. A lot of people like Expensify.
Yes.
Right. So does that just completely eliminate those options for
Brian,
people?
do you mean that, like, I know HubDoc's getting more and more baked into Xero. I haven't looked at it for a while. Is that what you mean? The Xero HubDoc solution?
No.
Because that's not necessarily going to become proprietary. Do they have another system beyond that? Because HubDoc's still standalone.
It's supposed to go straight from Uber for Business into
Right
Xero.
in. So no HubDoc, no
yeah.
Receipt Banky type tool.
No, they like Xero has their own built-in expense report module.
Okay.
I know you bleed green, so you wouldn't know this, but
I have a Xero account, dude. I go in there
Okay.
now and again. I just don't ever look beyond that.
Yeah. So my point though
Yeah,
is that like
don't go
there's
down that
definitely
road.
yeah, I know. There's definitely I still think there'll be some manual intervention.
Yeah.
And like, I guess we'll have to see how it works with the expense reporting module within Xero already.
But there's going to be manual intervention, and there is right now with, even though HubDoc and Receipt Bank both have an auto sync, auto publish feature, most of the time you still have to intervene.
Yep.
And you should. I mean,
And
someone
it
should
is
sign up.
But it is going to get better. Like that AI is going to get better. The OCR is going to get better. That it isn't going to necessarily, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in 6 months. There's going to get to a point though, where that human intervention is not needed. If we think about where it was, 3 to 5 years ago, even, you had to check every single thing. You had to check the date, the invoice number, the amount, the taxes, and you don't anymore. There's probably, maybe 1 in 3 that you're having to check as opposed to everyone. So the technology is advancing so quickly and it's getting so much better that I think we are going to arrive at a point where there is not going to be any manual intervention. And, we talk about providing advisory services and value services, and Bianca mentioned in the chat that, bookkeepers that work with their clients' best interest first will have a better chance of succeeding in this technology age. And we've heard that a lot. And I guess I want to actually put, some specifics around it. It all seems really generic. Yes, you have to do advisory, and yes, you have to serve your clients. Well, we've always tried to serve our clients. So what is the fundamental shift that we need to make so that we do stay relevant in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years?
Well, you just said it, stay relevant.
What does that mean?
It means we have to stay on top of what's going on. We have to listen to what's going on. We have to try out new things. We have to let Brian be our guinea pig because he loves that stuff. But you have to stay relevant by staying current, because we all know this industry is moving quickly and there's always new players in the game. There's always going to be something else. What you just mentioned, this partnership with Xero and Uber, that's a big deal because that's going to spawn other integrations with other. I mean, who cares about Uber? Because not everyone uses it, but phone bill, right? Like that's, to me, that's the first thing I thought of, your cell phone account. Like that, I remember getting bills back in the day that were hundreds of pages long with everyone's phone details. Well, now I want my phone detail to go right in, and you know what? Take this summary page with all the individual classes that you have set up. I want that posted. That's the next thing, right?
These challenges are not unique to our industry.
No.
Right. I mean, this is going on everywhere. And it's been going on for years. All you have to do is look at the auto industry, right? 15, 20 years ago, the assembly line workers were told, you better learn some new skills because 20 years from now, it's going to be a robot that's putting these cars together.
That's what it is now.
Learn some new skills, you're going to be out of a job. And this is no different. If you want to stay current, I think for a lot of people, you're going to need to learn some new skills to stay relevant, to make sure you have a job. Because the current skills you have, no matter how good they are, there's going to be less and less demand for those skills. And that's, it's nothing against you. It's nothing against our industry. That is just technology pushing the world forward. It has never stopped. It is not going to stop. So, I mean, and it's not unique to bookkeepers, right? There's lots of
Oh,
accountants
everywhere.
there's lots of accountants out there. If you want to stay relevant, you're going to have to learn some new skills because you're just not going to be relevant.
So maybe let's drill down into what those new skills are. Everyone says you need to move to advisory, you need new skills, but what does that mean? Like if someone is watching and they're a bookkeeper who has always done things traditionally, they are in QBO now or Xero, they're working with some of the apps, and we're now telling them, okay, that's not even enough.
Right.
So what does it mean?
So
What does
I
it mean
think
to learn new skills? What are those skills you need to learn?
I think you have to look at the tools that are coming along and say, okay, of these tools, let's pick on cash flow. With all of
You open a can of
cash
worms.
flow tools that are available, right? That are going to help small business owners. So then maybe as a bookkeeper, you want to learn one of these tools so that you can help your clients with cash flow projections, cash flow management, and offer it as a service that you haven't offered before. But I think that's what you have to look at is what are the tools that are available today? What are the ones, that are growing, that there's more and more of them coming. And that tells you, there's more and more of them coming because there's probably a demand. Financial reporting, right? Financial modeling. I mean, these are the tools that really seem to be growing. Document management. Like how can you help your clients become paperless? How can you help them manage their documents and their receipts and their invoices? It's going to require a little bit of thinking a little differently than what you're used to. It's going to be a little bit scary because it's not something you've done before. But again, you're going to have to make that leap and say, okay, what is it I feel somewhat comfortable with? And that's the tool or the area where you're going to have to spend some time, and you're going to have to spend the time learning these new tools and learning that area of the business, how it relates to small business, what's important to a small business owner, and how can you help them with that? Because as long as you can still keep helping small business owners, you're going to stay relevant because there's always going to be small businesses.
And these tools, they do help optimize businesses. The cash flow is one example. The paperless is a great example. That's how I sell Receipt Bank to my clients. I tell them paperless, audit proof, all those things that they want to hear. I just got some people signed up, new business today signed up on Receipt Bank, just on that whole thing. It's just focusing on that value piece, and it's not even really that hard. That's the stuff that's going to make your clients feel really good about the relationship they have with you, because you're helping them make their businesses better.
I think of what Brian has done in a relatively short time, and yes, Brian, I'm talking to you. What Brian has done in a relatively short time with Zapier.
Absolutely.
Right. And he's built himself up a great reputation in our industry as one of the go-to people. Well, he's also now one of the go-to people to help small business owners automate their business, not just help others in our community and in our industry.
Frankly, that's where you should be. Don't help us anymore. Go make money.
Right. I mean, he's taken a tool that is out there, that is available. He took the time, and I'm sure it's taken him lots of time, lots of hours to learn how to use it. And that's what's going to be required.
Totally.
So Brian, that's a question, if we can ask you, is that a service that you are selling to your clients? In addition to the bookkeeping and the tax side, are you actually going into their business and connecting things with Zapier that have nothing to do with the bookkeeping side?
Yes, but we don't advertise it yet. So if a client comes to us and says, I need help with communicating to my clients on a regular basis, maybe it's, I have a Zap that sends out client reminders every month, right? Maybe it's something like that they want. Super easy to do. But yeah,
Super
for the
easy
most
for you
part,
to do
yeah,
Yeah.
because you know
It's
how to do
scaling
it.
it is tricky.
Yeah.
Heather and
It
I had
is.
this
It
talk.
100% is. Yeah.
Heather and I had this talk. The challenge is maintaining it, because you're at the mercy of all these different APIs and security and everything that you have to keep going. And if you build this, I wouldn't call it a house of cards because it's not that, but there is some complexity to it. So it's hard to take a lot of volume on and advertise that I am a Zapier specialist. That's what I do for a living.
And so Ryan, do you set them up and then built into your monthly fee is the maintenance of the Zaps because they do break? Or is it, I set them up and you train them and then they do it themselves?
So lately it's been I set it up and I show them how to fix it.
Okay.
I have offered maintenance plans, but no one's bitten. So
There's that special Zapier plan, right? That you can run your client's Zaps from but it's bloody expensive, isn't it?
That's the team one, I think. It's like
yeah,
250 or 300 USD a month.
See, so that's a tool that if you dialed it in really well and you focused on that, that's what you would need, is like a console for scaling. That's not for everyone though, but that's definitely an opportunity. But you still got your day job.
Has made an interesting comment in the chat. She said, work with your client in a software that works for them, using apps that empower them. Bookkeepers can't keep forcing clients to work in what they know. So I'm going to disagree with you there, only because there's only so many that we can learn internally. You can't possibly know, Steve talked about cash flow. We can't know every cash flow app that's out there because they're all changing.
There's only about 15 of them right now. What do you mean you can't memorize them all? They're
all rolling out with their own, they're all rolling out with new features and new abilities and new integrations that you can't possibly stay on top of 15 different types of apps. I think you, in my opinion, and this is strictly my opinion.
I've kind of given up. I let Brian and Kelly figure all these new ones out because they will go chasing those squirrels.
Yeah, you have to narrow your focus, and maybe that means that you don't take a client on because they're not using the app that you're using. But I don't think that it's possible at all. So we have a new client that signed up with us. We're Pluto. We're, our entire workflow, our entire process is Pluto. We took on this new client who is using WayPay. And I'm not saying that Pluto is a better product than WayPay or vice versa. We started with Pluto and we built all this stuff around it. So that's why we use Pluto. But this client was using WayPay. They used Pluto previously and are willing to switch back to Pluto because that's what we use. But they came on board with us, and the first run though needed to be done in WayPay because everything wasn't set up yet in Pluto in time. And the amount of time that my team had to spend to try and get this one set of payments out was brutal. Not only, you would think that, okay, they would work very similarly, which they do, but they had to troubleshoot some stuff because something broke. And so they had to troubleshoot it. And if you take that and you multiply that by the number of apps that are in the industry, you can't possibly, your head would explode, I think, if you tried to stay on top of them all. So maybe it is that you have to choose clients that work with the app stack that you've chosen. Thoughts?
Well, but beyond that, say somebody is really tied to their programs and it's not one that I've chosen to support, I recognize that and send them to somebody that does use that app, because it's going to be a terrible relationship if I'm trying to make them change something that they're not willing to change. And I see it all the time when bookkeepers are pushing people into QuickBooks Online that use desktop and absolutely love desktop. I just consulted a month or two ago with somebody who was in desktop. They have union payroll, based on hours and gross and net, and they had like every different type of union due that I think I've ever seen. And they were told that it would work in QuickBooks Online. Well, it doesn't. QuickBooks Online can't handle a payroll that complex. So they had a system that worked.
Desktop.
They had a system that worked really well for them. And the person that they hired to do their books didn't want to support desktop. But instead of saying, you know what, I don't support desktop, maybe talk to XYZ firm, they made them switch to QBO. And it was a really horrible experience for them. And then they left. So that firm doesn't have that client anymore. The client's unhappy because now they have QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop because it was the only way they could get their payroll out. So
So is that one of the strategies that we all need to think about? Is we create our app stack and our tech stack, and then we create alliances with people who have different tech stacks so that someone comes to you, doesn't fit in with what your business is is able to handle, that you have a strong ally that you're confident in being able to refer to, and it works the other way around. Is that a strategy? Because I know, we kind of do it informally in some of the Facebook groups, but is that an actual strategy that you need to implement? No, this isn't my wheelhouse, but here I can refer you to someone who is an expert in this. Is there anyone that has that in place already?
Well, I do it with, like, when people come to me and they're on Xero. Sadly, I know people that are on QBO that they talk to Xero people, and the Xero people are like, oh, don't use QBO. It sucks. It's stupid. Don't use it. Yeah. Xero's better. I'm like, you like Xero? Stick with it. Don't convert. Like, that's stupid. Because if you're happy with the tool, why would you just switch to the tool that's just about the same, just looks different, and they all got their pros and cons? No way. You don't want to do conversion. So really, we should. And I have, one of the top Xero firms in town, in Calgary. They're good friends of mine. I don't hesitate to send work to them, and they've sent me some QBO leads as well. I think the feedback I get from people when I do that, the actual person getting referred, they always say, thank you very much for looking out for me. Yeah. You've given up the business, but to me, it's like what goes around comes around. It's the whole abundance mindset that if I keep sending work this way, it's eventually going to come back in some other form. I always say that
you're giving right. And the people that you refer, when you find out that they're happy with the solution they have, and you're like, you know what, don't change it.
Exactly.
Let's have you talk. I'm going to introduce you to these other couple people or whatever. The next time they have a question or a referral, they're going to send it to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. It's the whole abundance mindset. And it's taken me a lot of years in business to get past it, where it's just not like, I'm going to take everybody that comes my way because money, money, money.
We're competitive.
Because you get tired of not eating or struggling to pay your rent. But
I hear you.
But also, Brad, you said that you want to take the business. It's going to be a really short relationship. If you don't know the tools and it's not something you have experience with, even if it's an industry you don't have experience with and it's a complex industry, or you don't know the app stack that they're using, or you have them convert to something that doesn't work in Shannon's example, you're going to lose them anyways. So you're going to, and all of your effort is always at the front end when you sign on a new client. There is such a learning curve. There's onboarding them.
Oh, yeah. That it's twice as long as you expect. That's what I've just gone through this. I started a budget with a vineyard out here. I've told you about that one, Juliet.
Yeah.
And they're like, how much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see your business yet. And it came in twice as much as we expected. Yeah. And we worked hard to get there. And the client saw that right away, because he didn't tell me about where the skeletons were. There were a lot of skeletons to unravel. And I got that from this other client, a golf course client. And, I spent all this money at the initial conversion stage, just making sure I could make sense of their data so that I knew I could get it into QBO. And it took a couple of days, and I sent them a pretty good bill. And they're like, oh my God, why should it cost so much money? And it's like, it does at that initial stage. You're right. You have to learn that business. So you have to be willing to like conversions for the sake of conversions are foolish. That's
Yeah.
why I say if you're on Xero, you're on Sage, whatever, and you're comfortable with it, you have no desire to switch your tool, then yeah, find somebody that can do it. And that's what referrals are so great. But if you are willing to go down that road, it's sink or swim time, because like you said, you have to figure out the business. Now, I have a very broad base of experience in my past life. I was a controller, CFO for all these different businesses. I actually like learning new businesses because at the end of the day, we're just buying something and we're selling it and we want to make money. I've always been in for-profit. All businesses work the same. We just want more money in the bank account at the end of the day. So it's just all about how the dollars work through them.
And,
But it is a
and
big commitment.
I think this is where figuring out your niche and attracting the clients that you want to serve really comes in. And I know my own experience and from what I've seen from other people, they want to just take everybody who comes.
Yes.
And I found that the more specific I target my message, the more I get the client I want to work with. And I think with the automation and the different tools that we use, that is what is going to help us get past all this automation where the data entry is being taken away with the Xero and Uber for Business integration comes in. If we know what we want to do and who we want to work with, that's one of the ways that we can get past losing the data entry part.
Absolutely.
A great
And
example.
It used to be that you could. I mean, when we started AIS, it was, you need us to do something related to numbers. Sure, we're in, because there weren't that many things that you had to learn. There were probably 5 or 10, right? We had, we were supporting Sage, QuickBooks Desktop, Business Visions, PC Law. I think those were the 4.
You're on BV?
Yeah, we were.
Now you're
for a
bringing
long
me
time.
back. I used to love that tool.
But now, if you take just QuickBooks or just Xero, and you add the 300, 500, 700 apps that are out there, it's a whole different ballgame. It's not 3 or 5 different things that you look for. When we moved into the cloud and you wanted to scan your receipts, you had HubDoc and Receipt Bank. Those were your only options. Not anymore. And so it's certainly, it's accelerating, and I think it's just only going to get faster. And welcome, Tamitha. Tamitha has joined us as well online in the chat. So hey, Tamitha, how are you doing? So one of the other things I'd like to move on to is QB Live. So QB Live is already been in the US almost for a year now. I think it was March or April of last year that it launched in the US. And as of last week, 10 days ago, they announced that, they're now researching coming into Canada. And when we were at QB Connect in Toronto, they did talk about it coming to Canada as well. So we know it's coming. It's what the timeline is, we don't know. 12 to 18 months, it's going to be here for sure. What are the air quotes for, Brian?
I said researching with the research. They've already done their research.
Yeah,
I know
it's coming.
I've commented on this in Brad's group, Get Into It, and I know Sean has, my business partner, as well. And he
Sean just sent me something about QB Live. Was that you're doing?
No, not at all.
Okay, something in the States going on. We'll just leave that on the side.
So he made a very good point about the release that they sent, was that they're not researching this. They know exactly what they're going to do because they've already done it in the US. And if they're saying they're researching it already, that is absolutely not true, because they've already done the research. They know exactly which way they want to go. It's not something that you just say, let's give it a go. Like,
it's a different market,
pretty
though.
big, but it is still a big market, right? Because they
big, but
say
it's different.
60% or 40% of companies don't have a pro advisor.
Well, that's a number. They use 60% in scaling new heights. It wasn't just them doing it. It was Bookkeeper was driving that metric. They were the ones talking the 60-40 thing a lot. And Rich Priest was kind of just.
And I think also they're probably, they're probably researching what the price points need to be because they're going to be different than they are in the US and
Yes.
what the service
Sure.
offerings are. But
Yeah.
today there was a new email as well that went out about QB Live, again in
Maybe
the
that's
US.
what I'm looking at. Yeah.
Yeah. So-
Was it from Kim, Allison, and Mindy?
Yes,
That's
it
the
was.
one.
Yeah.
And
All,
so the email that went out
all
today
friends.
talks about how so QB Live is now going to be advertised in your QBOA dashboard as a recruiting tool to get bookkeepers. So they're going to post, are you interested in working for QBO or QB Live within the QBOA dashboard? Now they've said in that letter, that they're not going to target, they're trying to target sole proprietor bookkeepers so that they're not stealing people from firms, accounting,
Nice.
if you're
What?
tied to a firm.
That was a lot. They're lying. They're lying.
But
Absolutely.
it comes back to the same thing. Okay, so we're worried about, QB Live taking clients away from us. And there's been tons of talk about QB Live taking clients away from us. But Steve and I were talking about, there was an announcement last week or 10 days ago that Bench out of Vancouver is hiring looking for 200 new bookkeepers. 200. I
Good
mean,
luck with that.
we don't hire 200 new bookkeepers in a year,
They're going to have to go offshore.
but they're
Yeah.
looking for,
Yeah.
they're looking locally. They're looking for 200
They
new
won't find
bookkeepers.
200.
And then with QB Live coming on board in Canada, and they're already in the US, that they're going to be obviously getting bookkeepers. So not only are we having to worry about our client base, but now we have to worry about our staffing as well. So are we now going to have a shortage of good qualified people on our team? And how are we going to adapt to that?
That's a trickier one. I'll tell you one thing, they're not having much luck finding people themselves. And Brian, you actually directed me to this discussion with Laurel and Wilson on Twitter. I saw that.
Yeah.
Intuit's using offshore help now. They're overseas. What's that?
I don't think they are.
They are. Laura Lynn confirmed it. She had some issues with QB Live and she got to the bottom of it, and Intuit told her that this team that was working on these files was offshore.
But I think it was before they took over, before it moved to QB Live. Don't think
Brian, am I misunderstanding that one? You know that thread better than I do.
No, Juliet and I have some more information on this after the fact. So what Juliet's saying is true.
Okay, so they're not offshore. Okay, because
it is an offshore team, but they were doing the work before QB Live.
Oh, okay, so they have the team anyways. They're in place.
Yeah.
But to me, this is what's going to happen anyways. They're going to have to go offshore because it's not just you guys that are having problems finding people. I think it's just that there's a natural shortage of bookkeepers out there right now. And I hear it everywhere. It's not just you guys. I know Brian, you and Sean are always looking for that right person, and everyone else I know.
And isn't it interesting as we keep telling the entire world that the bookkeeping industry is a dying industry, it's not exactly encouraging younger people to go out and get an education to become a bookkeeper. So this is only going to become, I think, a bigger and bigger and bigger problem.
Well, you could get those qualified people if the training was right. Like what I've seen in bookkeeping and accounting training in general is they're still teaching us the old ways of doing things.
So I think you're right, Brad. But I mean, think of, young kids, right?
Yeah.
Teenagers, early 20s, and they're trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my life? What career should I be thinking about? And all they're hearing is, that these careers, have a very short lifespan in the future. So, I mean, the smart kids aren't going to want anything to do with that. It doesn't matter how good the training is. If they don't see a future in that particular industry, they're going to look elsewhere. And if we're doing a really lousy job of saying to them, yes, the data entry part of that industry maybe has a short lifespan. But
Yes,
there's
I
going to
agree.
be all kinds of other opportunities that are going to be available to you. And it's actually going to be a growing and exciting industry in the future. But I don't think that's the way it's being presented to them when they're 18 to 22 years old.
No,
Well, accounting in general is a hard sell. I mean, when I chose the accounting profession, my father worked for Coopers and Lybrand. Of course, they're the C in PwC now.
Yeah.
And he tried to talk me out of it. He says, why would you want to go into accounting? So it is a hard sell as it is, the accounting profession. I think our accounting bodies they're going to have to look at themselves a bit harder, and the bookkeeping bodies as well, to say, do we want to stay relevant? We need to be cutting edge, because the reality is that you can stay relevant if you start using the tools. And I don't see a lot of tools, and it's not even covered. But the reality is if you get people up to speed, I don't think it's necessarily dying. I think the old ways of doing things, that's the dying part. So is the profession really dying? I don't believe so.
If you read all the predictions where they say, automation is going to replace what industries in the next, 3 to 5 years, bookkeeping is always at the top of that list.
Yeah.
So as Steve said, there aren't going to be people who are looking at a new career and thinking about what they want to do, entering
Good
into
point.
the bookkeeping space. So if we don't have people coming into the bookkeeping space, and companies like Bench and QB Live are taking big chunks of bookkeepers now out of the market, what do we need to do to be able to get the talent that we need?
Well, is one of the things we need to do is to change the name of the role.
Yes, I
we need
agree.
to get rid of the term bookkeeper and the term accountant, because it just, there's so much more to what those roles are today.
Yeah.
That, I think when you start using terms for a role that's been around 100 years plus, it's very difficult to bring it into the 21st century.
And I think I agree with that. I think the challenge is that it's the business owners, the small business owners, who are all of our clients, whether it's Bench, QB Live, or us, it's the small businesses that are going to, it's those owners that need to know what that new terminology is in order for them to ask for it. They're going to ask for it. And we've seen that, where they ask for bookkeeper and accountant interchangeably. They don't know the
most small business owners don't understand accountant, bookkeeper, right? I mean, they're looking for an accountant
or tax specialist. How many people ask for accounting?
And they just don't understand the difference. So
tax is the worst, because tax is not accounting, right? People come to you for your taxes.
The third term, right? Okay, we're not a bookkeeper anymore. We're an accounting technician or an accounting technologist, or there's tons of different terms that are floating around. But unless the business owner even knows what that is, they're not going to be looking for it to fill it. So how are we going to find some kind of balance?
Well, and it's not going to change overnight, but it's also up to I believe the organizations, that whether it's the CPA or IPBC or organizations in the States, it has to start there. It has to start at the grassroots level. That they have to start educating their own members and the industry, that that term is just, it's not relevant anymore.
Anyone have any other thoughts about the term bookkeeper?
I've been hearing that. I've heard other people say they don't want to call themselves bookkeepers. I think Sherry Lee Mathers was messing around with it, like the data expert, or that whole data piece is something that's really.
Are you a financial data manager, a financial
like
data analyst, whatever? I mean, it's got to be something that's easy to say, easy to remember, and that easy to understand.
Well, businesses aren't going to know what the heck that is, so you're going to have to educate the general public as well.
And I agree with you, Brad. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we don't start doing it at some point, 5 years from now, we're going to be having the very same conversation and nothing will have changed.
Well, no, I'm not sure nothing will have changed, will have been left behind is what's going to happen, because someone else is going to fill that gap. And we want to make sure that it's us filling that gap, not somebody else. In my humble opinion.
I don't have any humble opinions, Juliet.
I love Shannon's. So Shannon's title is she's not a bookkeeper, she's a payroll goddess. I love that.
There you go.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
that's great. A great way to look at it too. Make it sound better, better than the rest by doing that.
Yeah.
It's good marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All she is doing is stating the obvious.
There you go.
I know.
But if you own that brand, people are going to want to be a part of your organization. They're going to bring business.
So Bianca's comment in the
product.
chat is, but the up and coming millennial business owners know the technologies. So I agree, they know the technologies, but I'm not sure that even the millennials that we've dealt with still know the difference between bookkeeper and accountant.
That's true.
And
They don't.
the distinction between the
Or they
two.
come to you with
Nobody
QuickBooks
does.
self-employed and they're like, hey, I got QuickBooks here. Let's go to town. And it's like, no. Because unfortunately, that's what a lot of people see are the phone apps. Everyone wants mobile. And I had this guy come to me the other day. He says, I want to run my entire business on my phone, everything. I never want to look at a computer. And I was like, I'll have fun with that. You're going to have to go in and use a computer now and again. And
I think the challenge is that us as small business owners are also competing with the messaging from big business like Xero and QBO and Bench as to how easy it all is. So we're also having to overcome that messaging that, okay, yes, it's great that you've got QuickBooks Online, but it doesn't mean your bookkeeping does itself.
doesn't teach you
still
accounting.
Right. Well, and the other day I got into a conversation with somebody who was trying to compare my payroll service to Patriot or Gusto.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what I said. My service was too expensive, but they didn't want to touch payroll. They were just, and part of it is, and payroll is, I think, more so than bookkeeping or advisory services, where people look at it as an expense and not an investment in their business. Because you pay me what you pay me, but the average person using a payroll software company and not knowing anything about payroll themselves is going to have, $800 to $1,000 in penalties and payroll compliance issues. So, do we just talk about compliance? Do we talk about one piece over another piece? And it does take a while to distinguish yourself from a payroll software. Because, well, if QuickBooks does this, how come I need you? Because QuickBooks doesn't do it.
No,
Not
it's
everybody
just a
is
tool.
Danny DeVito and can hit a button and run payroll in 15 seconds without it being set up properly. It doesn't happen.
All these tools are that way. Even just people that go and sign up for QBO and they think they can just start using it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there conveying that, oh yeah, it's simple. Just start using it. No problem. There's Facebook groups devoted to showing businesses how to use it. And I look at some of the advice on some of these groups and I'm like, oh my God, like people say, what's a journal entry? What do I do with a journal entry? And then you'll tell us, oh, you use journal entries for everything. And then you get all this horrible advice. So you got all these businesses going around thinking they know what they're doing.
Yes.
And you realize, where's your opening numbers? Like you don't even have a starting point here. If you've done a bank rec, they don't understand all that. And yeah, the tools are great, but you can't just, and you're right. They make it sound like it's too easy.
So is that
That's
another strategy for us? So we've identified a couple strategies. Let's recap. We got 5 minutes left and tell me if I've missed anything. So we've identified the strategy of being able to differentiate yourself. We don't like the term trusted advisor, but something along those lines where you are doing something other than from a data entry perspective. So that's one. Niche. finding a niche where you're not even necessarily where you're talking, an industry niche, but where you're narrowing an app stack or a tech stack and coming up with referral partners for anything outside of that area. So you become a specialist or an expert on the whatever tools you decide. What were the other ones that we've come up with strategies? Is it marketing? Is it that we need to change our marketing message from being a bookkeeper, which is associated with data entry, to something else? What other strategies can we implement to make sure that we are staying relevant?
I've got a strategy for firms that don't want QB Live to poach their employees.
Okay.
So, QB Live's probably going to pay around like maybe $20, $25 an hour, I would guess.
That's the number I hear, 25 in the US.
So that's about,
it's regional.
Yeah.
sure. So we'll call it 50K a year Canadian, right? Pay your employees more and tie that directly to monthly recurring revenue. And then you can add benefits such as working from home, which then is exactly what QB Live is doing. So with the pay piece though, I think I can speak for Sean for Blueprint, but we try to hire people that are hungry and want to grow with us, which means the more revenue they take on, the more they're going to get paid, and they can easily surpass whatever they may make from QB Live.
Definitely.
They have all the same benefits, working from home, flexible schedule, everything. They're just making more money because they're working on more revenue.
And the QB Live is not a full-time gig. It's $25 an hour, but it's very sporadic, I heard.
Well,
they're not going to be
I
working.
think you have to make a commitment of a minimum number of hours.
I heard it 20 hours.
Is the minimum.
Yeah, it's 20.
So it's
But
like a half week.
But you can work full-time if you want to, can't you? I don't think it has to be.
I would assume you could take all the work they want to throw at you.
Yeah. Sorry, Linda, you want
Yeah,
to?
I wanted to interject. I did talk with the QB Live people in a kind of like an offer for me to be one of their people because I signed up for it just to see how this would work. So it is dependent on where you live. So according to what state you live, they will give you a price. So it could be more like $20, 20 something an hour is all you would get. They did tell me that you would have to be available from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. But the team, and I'm guessing, I didn't go into much detail with them about it, but I'm guessing that like if you were not available when the client needs somebody, maybe it would be passed on to another person in your team. So you would kind of have to know something of everybody's companies in that team, I guess.
Okay.
Didn't work out the details, but anyway, they did want you to be a CPA or a certified pro advisor for online or a certified bookkeeper. So you had to have some kind of a title, which means that you would normally be making more than $20 an hour if you were going somewhere else. So it was kind of like, well, then where do you think you're getting all these people? And so are you getting people who are mostly retired or moms at home or something like that couldn't work all those hours? And they kind of said that, yeah, it was more towards that kind of person. And I was thinking too, maybe people that were right out of college, maybe that would be like, oh, I want to get into this. And this would be like an easy way of getting into it without, you don't have any history of what your salary is so far, but it would be easy to get your feet
Well,
wet.
here's what they're saying. The reason they'll pay you less is you're not acquiring the customer. There's no cost of acquisition to go get new business. You have to, no marketing. You're guaranteed to get a steady stream of income, no collections, no administration. You just have to do the work. So that's their rationale for cutting
And
that.
there
And
are
that makes sense to a point.
Yeah. And there are benefits as well.
Right? There's actual benefits like medical, dental, and
yes. I think it's even like RSP. Well, I don't know what it is in the US, but RSP
401k,
401k contributions. So they are pretty hefty for small business owners like ourselves that we're going to be competing with them. So
you're an employee. You are an employee in that situation.
yes, you absolutely are.
Here's the problem with that strategy though. Let's say it is a stay-at-home mom. I'm just going to pick on the stay-at-home moms for now, or a new student, we'll say, that didn't take bookkeeping or accounting. they go online, they get their Pro Advisor certification. That basically teaches you how to use the software.
Yep.
Doesn't actually teach you principles on bookkeeping,
Yeah, I
accounting,
agree.
how to do taxes. So like they're basically trying to compare someone who has a CPA, a CPB, an EA in the US, like all these other bookkeeping and accounting designations against a certified pro advisor
Yeah.
that has no background.
Yeah,
They're
that's
gonna
So like
struggle.
in my mind, if they keep doing this, they're probably going to strike out because the files are
Yeah.
going to be absolute shit.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
the people are just going to come back to, us if like
Right.
assuming
right.
believe,
And that
right?
was the
But-
experience that I heard from some people that already were having it, that they got somebody to do their bookkeeping through the QBO Live, and it became a mess. And then they had to start all over again. So yeah, I think, and for me, they talk about how bookkeeping stuff is going away. All of the clients that I have, they're on QBO, but I'm constantly having to fix things and constantly having to explain, just because you bought a new truck and you now have a truck loan doesn't mean that you put it to an expense. And now, since it's the owner, he's got the ability to create the account. It's called truck expense. And that's where he puts his loan payments. And I'm like, no, that's not what happens. So they don't understand all that. And so you're constantly having to explain all the accounting to them and fix everything, even with the automation not being right. And they're like, oh, but that's what it said on the banking screen. So I just put it in. It's like, well, that doesn't mean it's right. So there's a future for us for at least another 10 years, I think.
Okay,
10 years.
so we're past 9 o'clock, and we always try as much as possible to respect our hour for everyone. So great discussion. I appreciate everyone's input. And I think that from Linda's comment, being able to, and again, maybe it's our marketing message of being able to differentiate what it is that we're able to offer from the automation and the AI and the benches of the world. So thank you all very much for joining us. Steve, you're going to end us off with a quote for the week.
Make
Sure.
'em do a dance.
This week's quote, and I actually tried to find out who said this because it came back unknown. So I'm not really sure who I credit for this one.
If it's
but I
good,
did
it's
like
me.
it. There you go. We'll give this to Brad.
Okay.
Well, perhaps you'd like to share it with us then, Brad, if it's you.
Well, buddy.
So here's the quote. There are 7 days in each week, and someday is not one of them.
Very
Good
cool.
one. I
Excellent.
like that.
So that was
I wouldn't
Actually,
say
that was
that.
Brad.
No.
Thank you all very much for joining us.
See you, everyone.
Wednesday. Have
Have
a
a
fabulous
week,
week.
everyone.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Thanks.